Hey guys, it's Alexander, and today I am interviewing a special friend and colleague of mine, TC DeWitt. He is a producer, director, and screenwriter. In today's episode, we are talking about screenwriting. How do we get into it? What do we do when we're already in it? And what are some pathways to become a better screenwriter? Let's go ahead, guys, and let's get started. Hey guys, so today I'm here with TC DeWitt. He is a director, producer, and screenwriter, and we're going to try and team up today and tackle some questions and common problems that we find when trying to go into screenwriting. TC, if you could just go ahead and give me a quick intro, man, of yourself.
That was a wonderful intro right there. Yeah, I'm TC DeWitt. I am a screenwriter, director, actor, producer, editor. My main source of income, my career is writer first before everything, and I've been writing professionally for a few years now, but I don't need a part-time job anymore. So that's how you know you've succeeded in this world. About 3 years ago, I was like, okay, taking the safety net away. I'm just going to write and do film for a living. And I've been able to pay my bills for at least 3 years now. So, I mean, what more could someone ask for, right?
Yeah. That in itself is like, that's the hard part that most people can't figure out.
Yeah, this was the first year I owed taxes. That's how I did. I can't say that's well. I don't know if I did well in that regard, but at least in terms of I didn't have to do a W-2 because I'm not working for anyone but myself.
That's the measure of success.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you, man, can you tell us what inspired you first off to even venture into screenwriting? Was it like something that you had to do just because first because you mentioned you act also? So were you trying to like write your own scripts, or did you just genuinely have a thirst for like writing and you wanted to just go into it?
Well, certainly you did touch on something we could discuss even in greater detail in terms of being an actor and wanting to do your own stuff. But as far as what drew me specifically to screenwriting, I've always been, stories have been a huge part of my life, my whole life. Like even when I was a little kid, my dad would read to us every night before going to bed. If he went out of town, he'd tape record himself reading stories to us, and he'd put the interruptions in. So it'd be like, and then the three little pigs. Okay, TC, stop pulling Lindsay's hair. So storytelling. I definitely got that from my dad at a very young age, and I loved coming up with cartoons and comic books, and honestly, I started out wanting to be an illustrator. Wanted to work for Disney. Wanted to be an artist. And I went to the University of Wisconsin pursuing an illustration degree. I had been writing stories with my friends and casually for years up to that point, but it was an art appreciation class with Professor Funkenstein. Don't call her Professor Frankenstein. No, she doesn't like funk music. She was a very lovely woman. But I did a paper for our final, and we had to go into her office to get our final grade and our final review. And she gave me the only A of the year that she had given and asked if I had considered pursuing an English degree rather than an art degree. And I honestly never had, but she, with a little bit of guidance from her suggesting that I should maybe consider that, I was already a little bit disenfranchised with illustration because like with a lot of things, as soon as you have to do something you love, there's a danger of disliking it. Yeah. So I started pursuing a writing degree, which I didn't eventually get, and I used that I did short stories. I then took a playwriting class. That playwriting class gave me a sense of how to write screenplays. I moved to LA to try to apply. I'm breezing past some steps here.
By the way, for folks who don't know, TC is from Wisconsin originally, so that much, his level of passion for film and writing was that high that it brought him from Wisconsin all the way out to LA. Continue to drink.
I was working for right out of college. I got a job at a newspaper, and I was doing classifieds and legal and obituaries, and it just was soul sucking. And a girlfriend at the time was like, "Hey, I'm going to go to school in California. You can come with me, or we can break up." And I was like, "Guess I'm moving to California." So I decided to take a risk and come out here with the intent of learning as much as I could about the film industry, about television and film, and got onto real film sets and experienced what that process was like. And we could have a whole podcast just about that regard, but to hone in specifically on writing, the first gig I had was I would go to a stand-up comedy club every Monday, every week for a number of months. And I got to know comedians and the regular stable, and Mark Fry was the producer who did that weekly show. And I started writing jokes for comedians, which was pretty brave of me to say, like, hey, can I write a joke for you? But I made a good impression on these guys, and they were willing to let me help them write some jokes. And then eventually Mark Fry took a chance and put me up on stage to headline, and I started performing regularly. And that got me consistently writing, because I would write new material all the time.
Did that open your mind up to acting? Like, was that the moment where you're like, hey, I kind of like the feedback I'm getting from audiences. Maybe I should try this out more?
I had done acting in theater. I did theater in high school and college. So acting was always something I liked performing. It's something I always liked to do. I like to entertain people in any avenue that I possibly can, whether it's telling stories or writing film or performing on stage. So that bug was there, but getting up on stage and having to hone like a solid 7 minutes, that started building the structure of how to utilize the specific time frame I had to be on stage and tell jokes, but also to create arcs to not just get up there and do one-liners, which is a perfectly valid way to do stand-up comedy, but to structure a show with some sort of arc in it. And eventually I had some friends who were filmmakers in the Midwest back home who needed a screenwriter for a project. So they hired me. That was in 2010. And that was the first time I was actually hired to write a script, not something I was doing on my own, not something that not like a stage play, but specifically hired to write a screenplay. And that, with everything I learned in LA in about a year and a half, 2 years, everything that I had learned in school, and I'm actually applying my degree in writing, all of that coalesced into focusing in specifically on writing for screen, writing for film and television, short film. And yeah, while I do still love to do a bunch of other things, it was narrowing in and focusing on one thing. I'm sure you've heard jack of all trades, but a master of none. And it was a matter of like, okay, let's put the 10,000 hours into this specific thing, which I went to school for, and see where this takes me. And that is a very long-winded answer for how I got into screenwriting.
No, dude, I think that was amazing, because people want to hear that journey, because, as they hear your journey, they can kind of pick up on moments where they can relate to, well, wow, I've been through that. I did that. I made that journey from this state to LA, or this state to New York, wherever it is. So yeah. It's always really humbling, or really great to hear people's stories, because you realize how we're kind of all the same. We all have similar things in our story. Some people are born here, some people aren't, but people can relate some way or another. And it sounds like, from what you're saying, that you have, to get where you are today as a screenwriter, you have a multitude of backgrounds, from writing in theater, from writing stand-up, from writing short stories, writing comics. You really, from an early age, made it a point to diversify yourself with, almost having like a tool for every occasion within screenwriting.
Yeah, definitely beneficial to you. You're right on the money there. Absorbing the whole of the world of filmmaking, as opposed to, like, there are people who write a very specific style, and they pigeonhole themselves in that style. Yeah. But you're right, being able to diversify yourself in understanding many avenues of the filmmaking process, of the entertainment world, it can only be beneficial to writing for other people, which is ultimately the goal, to be paid for your work, which means being able to write for other people.
Yeah. So TC, I want to ask you, man, because I feel like one common thing people struggle with is, can you tell us the difference between when you see a credit that says story by,
in the credit that says screenplay by? Like, what is,
Sure.
what's the, like, is that a gray area? And what's that, like, how do you define those two?
To put it in the simplest of terms, the screenwriter is the person who literally types the script. And a story by credit can be the screenwriter. You could be the one who came up with the story. So then you'll get the story by credit and the screenwriter credit. But a lot of times the story by credit goes to a producer or some sort of creator who conceptualized the premise or conceptualized the plot. Like if I said, "Oh, Alex, I've got this great idea. It's snowmen, right, in the winter who come to life during Christmas and they start just eating a town. It's like Gremlins, but with snowmen. Like that would be great, wouldn't it?" Then we should write that. And then you're like, "Yeah, that sounds fun. Let's do that." And then you sit down and start taking these ideas and actually write the screenplay. Story by TC, screenplay by Alex. So that's as simple as it needs to be right there. Yeah. Who came up with the story and who actually wrote the screenplay.
No, that was very good, man. I'm gonna go ahead and get to our next question. Sorry, this is a little choppy. Anyways, so I know everyone's story is different. As I talk to more folks within the film industry, I kind of realize that everyone has their own journey. There's not one way to get to a certain career. But in the layman's sense, how would you define, or how would you say, how does one get into screenwriting? Do they just write? Do they, what would you say?
Well, first and foremost, I have two answers right out of the gate to answer a question like that. First, if you are a writer, or if you want to call yourself a writer, you got to write. And it's not just coming up with ideas. That goes right back to the answer to the previous question. You can come up with a story, but can you write it? And it doesn't need to be good. You just need to literally put pen to paper or fingers to keyboards and write. If I asked you right now to go run a marathon, do you think you could do it?
I'm so shape.
Alex, you can't call yourself a runner or a marathon runner because you can't. And writing it makes you a writer, whether you sell a screenplay or not, whether you are any good or not. That's all subjective, objective, whatever have you. Yeah. You have to write. People who say they're a writer and don't write, you're just an idea person. If you keep it all inside your head, it's not going anywhere. It doesn't do you any good to have it in here. It doesn't do you any good to have some idea on your phone. It doesn't do you any good to have it on a napkin or in a notebook. You need to start putting it down so that if someone says, "I'm a writer," like just an example from my life, early on when I was started to really focus in on screenwriting, I was with some friends at a gathering, not like a party, and there was some guy who was like, "Oh, I'm a producer, and I'm just looking for short scripts, but it's so hard to find people who have short scripts." And I said, "Excuse me, sorry to interrupt, but I'm a writer. I have short scripts." "Oh, yeah, okay, email me." I'm like, "No, I literally have one right here. I just happen to have one in my backpack." He's like, "Well, hello," but to be able to literally go, "No, you want something? I got it right here. Boom, let's go." And that was the first script I ever sold, actually.
Wow,
it was made into a film, and it was not made well. So take that for what it's worth.
A little short ending, but I love it.
But so first and foremost, if you want to be a writer, you have to write. Whether you don't have to show anyone, but you do need to write. You do need to hone your craft. You need to do the workouts to run the 5K, to run the marathon, right? And to piggyback off that for an answer, don't say no. Don't be so humble as be like, "Oh, I don't write comedy." No, I write like. You need to be able to say yes to every chance you get, so that you gain the power to say no. And that can suck, because writing for people whose ideas aren't very good, or writing for people who aren't exactly paying you more than $10 or what have you, you want to have standards. You want to be able to have work that you're proud of. But to hone your craft, to be a professional writer and hone your craft, you need to write for people. And taking every opportunity, saying yes, will eventually give you the power to say no. So if someone says I'm doing a 48-hour film project and I need a writer, hey, I'm free that weekend. Let's do this. Hey, my friend is doing wants to do a spec script for diapers. Hey, let's write a thing about diapers. Like taking every chance.
Yeah, I feel like by doing that, you're almost challenging yourself to write new things that you wouldn't normally write. And so it's helping you, I guess, just widen your portfolio, but also challenge yourself too, because if you play it safe the whole time, you're not really growing as a writer, it sounds like.
Right. And by writing other things that like other topics or for products you'd never even would have considered, you're going to develop what your skill set is, right? You might be doing an ad for diapers. You might be doing a snowman short film, and that might not be what you want to write. You might want to write, David O. Russell style dramas. And by writing for other things that you'll start, I'm really good at writing back and forth snappy dialogue. I'm really good at writing existential crises in diaper commercials, right? I when I first started out wasn't particularly strong with realistic sounding dialogue. This goes all the way back to my playwriting in college. And it took writing dialogue and listening to people talk and writing and getting critiques from fellow writers to be like, work on this style, like work on this language. And fast forward to years later, I've written for a Barbie doll show. I never would have thought in a million years I would have written for a Barbie doll show, but I got hired to punch up the dialogue on it, and then got hired again and again and again to write for this Barbie show. And it was a chance to write dialogue for Barbie dolls. But it because I had written for so many in different arenas, it wasn't a far cry to sit down and go, okay, well, I know they can't curse, so I won't do that. But I know how to write two people talking back and forth.
Yeah. It's
so
not when you boil it down, you find as you do these various things that you would normally find yourself writing, you can kind of boil it. You can kind of see the similarities in each of these stories, and you can kind of boil down the bare essence of, okay, what are the bare bones of a script? And that kind of defines your rule set of like where you start from and what you can do, it sounds like.
Yeah, it'll help develop the way you approach a script. And I don't approach every script the exact same way. Once I kind of get into the pocket, once I am getting the ball rolling, to mix a metaphor, I will find I'm doing similar things, which I'm happy to elaborate on in terms of how to continue successfully writing. But it's right if you want to be a writer, and don't say no. Take every chance to prove yourself as a writer, if only to challenge yourself. That is my advice right there. When I first moved to California, I read a blog about writing. It was a motivational blog, and I've remembered to this day, there was the triangle of success was on this blog, and it's persistence, talent, and luck. And you only need one side of the triangle to succeed. You could be persistent and lucky and not have a lick of talent and succeed. You could be lucky and talented and just get it right away. You can be persistent and what's the other one? And talented and never have any luck. Like, it's just a matter of persistence is very, very important. And talent is something that people can have, but you can develop further. And sometimes you got to make your own luck.
Yeah. It's almost like you can have a natural gift for writing, but not everyone has that, and that's where craft comes in. And you can find that craft by knowing how you make a script. Like, what are the technical things required to write a screenplay, and then start from there, and then watch a ton of movies.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Everyone's a storyteller. How was your day, Alex? You could tell me your day, whether you think you're a storyteller or not. You're going to tell me a story. It might be like, it's fine, went to the grocery store. Boring story, but it was a story. And you're right, watching movies. People who are already interested in writing have stories, a million stories in their head. And whether it's been told before or not, there's something I'm drawing from other people who've given me advice in the past, like the triangle of success. I saw one of my favorite comic book writers, Mark Waid. I saw him at a comic book convention once, and he said, if you think you have an original idea, If you think you have original characters, you don't. Because Shakespeare wrote everything except Die Hard, which was awesome. And it's true. So to what I was saying earlier, but everybody's a storyteller. Everybody knows stories already. You can tell the story of the Three Little Pigs, and I can tell the story of the Three Little Pigs, but we're going to tell it a little differently.
No, you're right.
So absorbing stories, watching movies, reading screenplays. You can find tens of thousands of screenplays online right now. Just Google your favorite movie screenplay and read it. To see how it went from page to screen is remarkable sometimes. And that is a problem-solving technique for later. If you had to write a car chase, Alex, and I've never written a car chase before. Well, let's go look at the script for Ronin or Bullet or Fast and the Furious and see how they put car chases on the page and how did it look on the screen. So it's absorb, learn, constantly be willing to learn.
No, I think that's great advice. I think it's the same rules apply if you're the director, a DP. You have to study hours and hours of that material and how experts, professionals, people who dedicate their whole lives to doing this career, and see what they did and what worked for them and what didn't work for them. And then apply that.
There are no phenom filmmakers. Nobody is just automatically a great filmmaker. People get lucky on their first feature film, but they didn't just like, I think I'm going to make a feature this weekend. Oh, I won an Oscar. What? No, that doesn't happen. You have to look to the other, learn. Like, don't be afraid to humble yourself in saying, sure, I'll write that crappy idea and make it as good as I can. And don't be afraid to humble yourself to study and homage and absorb the other techniques of the people who've blazed the trails before you. There's nothing wrong with that.
So TC, that actually brings me to my next question, man. So when let's say for a beginner, and you're starting to write a screenplay, would you recommend that they pull from life experience, or does it get too personal or too entangled if they're drawing from their own selves?
There's that old adage that you hear in writing, write what you know. And that doesn't mean literally only write what you literally know, right? It's writing from a true place. So two friends having a Zoom call right now discussing filmmaking, that's very real to us. We could set that on Mars. We could be two lizard people at the bottom of the ocean having this conversation. And it's not about like, well, I don't literally know lizard people, but draw from your life, draw from what you do know and apply it to the fantastical, to the incredible, to the wherever your imagination will go. But don't be afraid to draw from your own experiences. Because those are the realest things that you do know. I had mentioned earlier, I went out of my way to develop my dialogue skills because I used to write with a friend in college, and he was awesome at dialogue, and I was really good at description. So we teamed up and wrote a lot of stuff together. And he'd always be like, I'll handle the dialogue. You're not very good at it. A very honest and loving friend. And so when I started working for the newspaper, every day on my lunch break, I'd sit at the coffee shop across the street and just listen to the people talking around me. And I'd write down conversations I heard, or just like exchanges of people like, hey, did you see that new movie? Yeah, I liked it. Like just listening to how people talk. And so that's, in a sense, writing what I know, listening to how people talk around me. Or again, to go back to studying how other filmmakers have done it, watching film noir, listening to old radio dramas, listening to 1950s serials, you'll get a sense of how people spoke during the black and white gangster area, right? Yeah. Gangster, sorry, let's be very specific there. So drawing from personal experiences, drawing from your life is good. That is a good place to go because it's the most real thing you know around yourself. Yeah. The trick is to how do you mold that and develop that to something where people just don't go, well, I mean, that you're Joe. I know you're Joe because, right. I mean, hey, Woody Allen has made an entire career doing that. So, that's fine. You can be a little more subtle. Look at every Chris Nolan movie. The protagonist is always a nice blonde guy in a suit. So, it's okay.
And I think it sounds like what you're saying is that you want to draw from life experience because you want to train yourself to know what it's like to have a genuine human experience. And
Yes.
I feel like at the base of every story is some kind of human experience or exchange of human experiences. You can watch a sci-fi movie or a horror movie or a zombie show like Walking Dead, and it's not, it's sometimes it can be about the genre, but at the base of it, there is some kind of human experience happening that people can relate to past the genre.
Exactly. And to be fair, there are plenty of plot-driven scripts. So it's all about, I got a great idea, A, B, C, D. Honestly, just to Nolan as an example, Tenet's a great example of a very well thought out idea of a plot. Did he develop those characters well enough? Well, that's also a different style of writing because there's plenty of stories, movies that you can look at that might not have the most complex plot, but the characters are so fascinating, so interesting. And that's fine. There's just different ways of writing. There's no right way or wrong way. It's just what are your tastes. A good example, you look at something like Big Bang Theory, which is status quo television. Nothing ever insanely world-changing happens to those characters. And it's all about, let's tell a joke every 3 lines of dialogue. Here's the premise. Oh, they got a DVD they didn't want. Burp, burp, right? And it's perfectly digestible fast food television. And then you could look at something like Community, which on its surface is just, oh, these are people at a community college who do weird things. But if you look deeper, the amount of character work that is done just on the page from the writer's room to the screen is extraordinary. And it's just 2 different styles of telling a similar nerdy kind of worlds. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I think so. I want to ask you another question because you had mentioned earlier about beginners and features. So out the gate, maybe not out the gate, but for beginners who are trying to venture into screenwriting, would you suggest that they only focus on writing short films for a certain reason, or is it should they try writing feature films even though they are a novice and they have almost no experience? Is that like a no-no?
Well, I would never say no to anyone who's attempting to write a feature versus a short. It's encouraging just that people are attempting it.
Yeah.
The trick with a feature, to specifically speak on that, should anyone write a feature, what it comes down to is, do you have an idea that you would ask strangers to sit down and watch for 90 minutes? Because you might have a great idea, but is it feature length? Is it, and that's not to discourage someone from attempting it. It's just that a feature film, the length of it, to be 100 pages, we'll say 100 pages. Honestly, in my professional experience, 100 pages is desirable. That's the minimum and over that, then you start delving into territory where producers get sketchy and afraid of 115 pages. No.
Yeah.
But to write a 100-page screenplay isn't just about getting 100 pages of dialogue and plot down. You have to have a structure there. You have to be able to hold people's attention for pages and pages at a time. And I would encourage people to, like I said earlier, read your favorite films. Go online. There's this. You can go to scripts.com and Drew's Scriptorama, and there's plenty of resources to find screenplays and see what it looks like on the page and follow the film through the written word. That's not easy. I've written many features, and whether they're all good or not, as with anything in art, is subjective. But it took me a bit to have the courage to write something that I would want to make myself and say, this is a story I'd ask someone to sit down for an hour and a half, 2 hours to watch. Because it's asking a lot of your friends, let alone strangers.
Yeah.
So it's not something I would suggest someone just go right out of the gate. I'm going to do a feature. Boom. It's like, whoa, hold on. You can't run this marathon without some workouts here.
Yeah.
So being able to understand the structure of a plot, we know it because it's just ingrained into us because of pop culture and the zeitgeist that holds storytelling and television and film and Disney and everything. We know in ourselves, like we know subconsciously what a 3-act structure is.
Yeah.
And to be able to fine tune that in a small capacity and then grow that into a feature, that's what I encourage. I encourage people to take the time to write a short that is a complete story. Because you could write someone could write a short story, like short film, that doesn't have an ending, that doesn't have closure, that doesn't have there is an art to the short story. There is an art to short films. If you can present a full story in 7 minutes, that's skill. That is something worth developing. Because if you can do that in 7 minutes, then you can do that in 70 minutes. And if you can do it in 70, you can do it in an hour, 2 hours. Like, it can grow from there. So I highly recommend perfecting the art of just a 1, 2, 3 punch of a story, whether that's a joke, whether it's a short film, and let that grow into bigger and better things. So that's.
I want to say, it almost sounds like you have to ask yourself, can I solve this story's problem easy? And the level of difficulty your answer is determines, like, okay, if it's not that easy, then maybe it's, that tells you how long that film needs to be.
That's it's a really good way to put it. Yeah.
Awesome.
The stakes, what are the stakes here? And certainly you can have low stakes and have a long movie, and you can have high stakes and crunch it down into 15 minutes.
Yeah.
It really just comes down to, what's the story? What's your intent? Why are you telling this story? I tell stories to entertain. I tell stories to move. I tell stories to educate. Even working with you, Alex, on something like the Human Project, those screenplays have little arcs to them. They're informative. It's infotainment. It's edutainment. But there's a little bit of an arc in those, and that being able to write episodes for a show like that comes from experience of, well, how do you condense this into 5 minutes and not 20?
Yeah. Awesome. So, TC, what are some pathways that people can take to try and, because you mentioned earlier, just say yes to anything that comes your way.
Yeah.
Obviously that's a great answer, and to an extent that's something that's out of your control, because that involves someone else affording you the opportunity to work. But what can someone do on their own that they're responsible for to generate their own kind of work? Like, would you recommend anything, or just like what would you recommend?
Well, you're right. It's more than just like write to get it out there. You want to hone your craft. Are you asking specifically like what people can do in terms of finding work? Is that what you're asking? Or?
Yeah, as far as either finding work or creating their own work.
Well, I've said it multiple times. Learning, like, absorb, be a sponge, learn. And there are some wonderful resources for educating yourself without having to pay an arm and a leg to go to film school. Mm-hmm. YouTube has some incredible YouTube channels that are devoted to the craft of screenwriting. Lessons from the screenplay and Just Write. Highly recommend those two, because they are specifically free education. And if you want to go one step further, master classes. You see those ads pop up all the time. If you've liked a film post on Facebook, you're going to see an ad for master class. Yeah. Those master classes are classes about how to hone your skill as a screenwriter. Yeah. But as far as where to go once you have those tools, once you feel like you're ready to put yourself out there, to advertise yourself as a writer, people will turn their nose up at, but I say shame on you for poo-pooing the opportunity. Fiverr is a great resource to dip your toe anonymously, if you want, into the world of work for hire. To get up on Fiverr, set up an account and say, hey, I'll do a 5-page short film for $10. I'll have it to you in 3 days. Like, going on Fiverr, setting up yourself as a little writer's freelance writing corner is a perfectly great way to immediately start getting work, and also delve yourself into the business side of it, of like dealing with clients who can be really great and also be really weird and also be really frustrating. But if you are in a place where you think you want to start proving yourself capable of writing, Fiverr is a great option. Craigslist is sketchy, but also there's options there. Look into the universities nearby, wherever you might live. There's going to be film classes or people who are independently making films on the side. And if that doesn't work for you, asking your friends, who wants to shoot a short film this week? Who wants to shoot a scene of something this week? Because while you may be pursuing writing, there's going to be someone out there who wants to film, who wants to be a director. There's plenty of people who want to be actors. And it doesn't need to be shown. It doesn't have to be good. You're not competing with anyone. You're just challenging yourself to learn and try and do or do not, as Yoda would say.
Yeah.
And the best part of whether you're going on Fiverr to find some client for a few bucks, or a client trying to find you, or you're making something with your friends, or you're looking to just throw yourself out there as a writer, advertise yourself as a writer, is if something gets made, you have content. And the more you put yourself out there, willingly putting yourself out there, Fiverr, classifieds, advertising on Facebook, getting your friends, the more content you get in, and eventually that content's going to be good. And then you can start leveling up. If you're playing in the video game world, you can say, hey, check this out. I wrote this thing. They shot a short film for a 48. It got done. Here it is. You post it on Facebook, and now you have your 1,000 friends or so who see, hey, that was a good short. You wrote that? I didn't know you wrote. Yeah, I would like to write something, or I have an idea for a movie. Can you help me out with that? Yes, I can. I can help you write that. And you grow your library of content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Fiverr is a great option because maybe because the pay is so low, it's a low risk opportunity basically. Like, it's not some big corporate movie studio like Universal or something where you mess up, it's like that's your name.
Yeah. No, it's you're right. It's the minor leagues. It's T-ball essentially. Like, not to. I did Fiverr. I've done Fiverr. I do Fiverr. It's a great resource to get some extra scratch and to put yourself out there. But you're right. It's low risk. There's no what. So it's like right now during the pandemic. Sorry to put it to carbon date this episode of this podcast, but if you have a friend out there who is scraping by and they get a job at McDonald's, they're doing the best they can. You can't, if you're shaming them for getting the job done to pay their bills, you're the a-hole. Yeah. So someone out there who puts themselves out on Fiverr or throws himself out there to work on 48s or student films, like, they're trying. Where's your movie? All right, sorry, not everyone could just walk up to Warner Bros. And go, hey, I'm Steven Spielberg. Can I make a movie here? Okay, thanks. It's not going to happen.
You're right. And so, TC, I want to ask you a question next. I know you do some ghostwriting also.
Yes.
Can you explain what that is, and like if that's a pathway that people can take to continue doing screenwriting?
Absolutely. So ghostwriting this one's tough because there are colleagues that I work with who do not approve of ghostwriting because you're writing for someone else and they're going to get the credit. It's as simple as I'll do punch up on feature films, on television shows, where someone will have a complete script. They will say, oh, this is good, but it's not getting the love that I hope it would be. And I get hired to come in and just do minor adjustments. And there are people out there like Patton Oswalt, Carrie Fisher, Quentin Tarantino, Aaron Sorkin. There are people who you know as household names who have punched up movies you've seen, and they don't get any credit. And it's only through whispers like, did you know Tarantino? Hey, Alex, did you know that Quentin Tarantino did a punch up on The Rock? You didn't know that, but now you do know that. And the next time you watch The Rock, you're going to go, oh, that Beatles stuff makes sense now. But ghostwriting is an interesting world to play in because it is writing for someone else to get the credit. But the advantage of that is punching up for someone, ghostwriting for someone enough times, they're going to go, you're really good at this writing thing. why don't I hire you to actually write this screenplay?
Yeah.
It is a gateway into writing, getting hired to write lengthier things that you will get your name on. In the freelance world, in the gig-based world, ghostwriting is sort of like doing a spec script. So if you're unfamiliar with spec scripts, say you want to prove yourself capable of writing for a show like Modern Family just went off the air, but say I would love to write for Modern Family. You would do a spec script of an episode of the show, or you would do a spec script for something like Happy Endings, like a similar show. And then someone could look at that and go, you totally get the voice of these characters. This spec script we will never make, but we know that you know how to write these characters.
Yeah.
So spec scripts, ghostwriting, they're in a similar ballpark. It's just the hardest thing about ghostwriting is the non-disclosure. To have written, to have worked on a feature that's in theaters and not be able to go, that's my joke. I wrote that line of dialogue. Okay, fine, sue me, Writers Guild. I'm sorry. Like that's really frustrating from a creative perspective. But it's okay. It's going to be fine. If you got that far, then people are going to keep coming back for more, and eventually, hopefully, you'll be like, written by me. Yes.
So TC, I feel like we've kind of journeyed quite a bit through, realizing that you want to be a screenwriter, to things that you can do to better yourself as a writer as well, and actually making that tangible with writing scripts, writing shorts, ghostwriting, finding work online, what to read scripts online, to better yourself. Is there anything else that you would kind of toss in there that people should know?
Well, it is putting in the work. It is being willing to learn. It is being willing to, it's hard to take criticism, but having someone you can trust to read your stuff and give you constructive feedback, not someone who's going to eviscerate what you've done. That's not beneficial at all. But for someone that you can collaborate with, co-write with, to sit down and have someone be the story person, and you're like, okay, yeah, keep going. These jokes are great. Trusting someone to judge your work from a very safe place and a constructive place, I think that's important. You're only going to improve yourself as a writer, not just in writing all the time, but having someone look at it and tell you if it's any good. There's nothing more fulfilling and terrifying as to see something you've written presented to an audience and sit there going, are they going to laugh at the right point? Are they going to cry at the right spot? And succeeding in that is exciting. You'll sweat through your shirt, but and the simplest form of that is to sit down and have someone you trust look at your stuff. And that trust can go a long way, because if you have someone who is an actor, or if you have someone who is a director in your life who doesn't fancy themselves a writer, that's two puzzle pieces that can connect, and that collaboration can keep going. I know, Alex, you have guys that you came up with that you did that very thing with, where you complemented each other in order to pursue making your features and your films. And it's great to get other people's perspective, especially when you trust them. If you don't trust them, then their opinion doesn't matter. But those are the ones you're going to remember.
Yeah.
So I would say that having someone look at your stuff and let you know how you're doing.
And this question is kind of off the cuff a bit. But screenwriting and film festivals, are those like ones that you into? Better yourself, challenge yourself? What's up with that?
Screenwriting film festivals are a tough world to delve into, because it's a machine. They're gonna chew up your script and spit it out. It is not kind, unless you've written something that someone genuinely loves and you just get gushing feedback back. That's going to be very, very helpful. But you're writing, you're entering these screenplays, you're entering these competitions, and giving it to strangers who are going to be having a bad day. They're people you don't know who are reading 15 to 50 to 100 screenplays, and they aren't going to give you a chance. Like, screenplay competitions are good. Like, you can win you can win some money that way. You can put yourself out there and be able to say, hey, I was a semifinalist for the Tribeca screenwriting competition. That is worth something to be able to promote yourself in that regard. That is worth something it's the difference between challenging yourself to run a 5K and trying to beat your best time and running a turkey day race and hoping to beat your brother-in-law. I know that sounded really specific, but please don't take that. Screenwriting competitions are a competition, and that can be cutthroat, that can be frustrating. There is some fulfillment in there if you're able to get through that machine. But in my experience, a lot of those screenwriting competitions are just a way to give people your money.
Wow. I mean, that's definitely to know, man. As far as, just not wasting your time, or also not just having the right expectations when you go into that.
Exactly. The expectations, that is key. If your intent is to try to win some money, if your intent is to try to get those laurels that said, I was a semifinalist, that is good. Money is good. Laurels are good. But it also comes down to, like you said, expectations. I look to people who love the book Save the Cat. Save the Cat is a great resource in how to write a screenplay that may sell. It is not going to teach you how to write a good screenplay, and it's not going to teach you the art and the craft of writing a film, of telling a story. It's just going to talk about the business of it. And that's perfectly fine, because if your goal is to sell scripts and make money, get paid, son, then Save the Cat's a good resource for that. But for my taste, I'm more about, why are you telling this story? How do you craft this story to mean something to you and the people who read it and see it? So it's just Big Bang Theory and Community again, to go back to that analogy.
Awesome. Well, dude, I feel like you really journeyed and covered a whole range of topics within screenwriting itself. I want to thank you again, man, for hopping on this podcast with me.
Thanks for having me.
You're amazing. If there's anything, TC, that you want to plug in fast, anything you're working on, your Instagram, whatever, just go for it.
Well, if you're interested in hearing my process as a screenwriter, I have a podcast that comes out every 2 weeks on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, basically wherever you can listen to your podcasts. And it's called The Studio Demands It. You can go to studiodemandsit.com to see all of our episodes. Like I said, it's on Apple and Google. But it's essentially the whole premise of the show is me and my co-writer, Jim. We are given a demand live on the air for a film idea, and we have to, on the spot, craft a movie right there. And it's figuring out the characters, figuring out the plot, figuring out the structure, and we try to keep it under about an hour and a half. And it's brainstorming live the screenwriting process, and it's going to be different and not everybody has the same process. But because we always get different demands, there's always something different that we're bringing to each episode. So if you're interested to hear my process along with Jim, how just an idea, a title alone, a premise alone can grow into a full structured idea that could then be turned into a screenplay, check out Studio Demands It.
It covers some pretty cool stuff. It's usually scenarios where you ask yourself, I want to see that. Example of an episode that you guys might cover.
Give an example.
What kind of movie?
So we work under the stipulations. We have two types of episode. We have movies that people think should exist, and they'll give us some sort of stipulations, like you need to meet these requirements, or movies that do exist, and we have to work under the assumption of what were the demand? What did the studio, what did some bean counting, suit wearing, non-creative type go, all right, so Sylvester Stallone needs to be in this with all a bunch of 80s action heroes. It's called The Expendables, okay? So this is what Stallone wants. He's going to star in it, direct it, and write it and all that. We work on the assumption of what the studio demanded.
Yeah.
And we try to come up with a better version of the movie than what we got. Wow. Or we'll work under the stipulation of someone saying, okay, 1989 Predator came out. In 1993, Predator 2 came out. if it was 1997, what would Predator 3 have been like? So then we have to go, okay, it's 1997. Who are the actors we'd pick? What's the plot we would do? Okay, the studio demands that we don't repeat locations and we can't bring characters back. Okay, all right, well, let's come up with a Predator 3 that stars Sylvester Stallone and Denzel Washington. We love it.
Honestly, if that doesn't sell you alone, I'm wanting to watch that podcast. Go for it.
Check it out. We have a lot of fun. We did Tron 3. We did the absolute craziest one we did was we had to come up with a Mother Goose cinematic universe, and it turned out great. It turned out great, Alex. Let me tell you.
Oh, that sounds amazing, dude.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you again, man, for hopping on this podcast with me. I hope this information is super resourceful. People either beginning or who are advanced, I want to refresh you. TC, thank you again, man. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everyone. Right? Have fun. It's got to be fun when you do it.
And guys, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, guys, and got some valuable information. If you guys enjoyed this content, please go ahead and like and leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear your feedback and any suggestions you may have on future content that I can work on, guys. And guys, if you haven't already, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It helps support it, and also it keeps you updated weekly when I release new videos. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you on the next one.